what type of thing? Latin what? European, including Latin, European harmonies. And the last one's really simple, and it has to, which would eventually be the Civil Rights Movement. What else was it? It was a blend of West African rhythm, European harmonies, and what? Close. Black work songs. When blacks worked in these days, there you go, black work songs. So, jazz music was born in the South, notably in New Orleans, and it blended together three things: West African rhythm, European harmonies, and black work songs. The first great jazz musicians were African Americans. And there's lots of them. Mr. Rose mentioned one today, and I'm thinking to myself, dang it, day late and a dollar short. Who did he mention today? Louie Armstrong. He was a jazz singer and a trumpet player. Very popular, one of the greatest jazz musicians in our country's history, and one of the first great jazz musicians of the time was Louie Armstrong. He was a jazz singer and a trumpet player. You got to have people that compose music, right? And the first great jazz composer was Jelly Roll Morton. Jelly Roll Morton. And jazz singers weren't just male. The first famous female jazz singer was Bessie Smith. So the first great jazz musicians were of African American descent, including Louie Armstrong, who was a jazz singer and a trumpet player, Jelly Roll Morton, who was a jazz composer, and the first famous female jazz singer was Bessie Smith. Now, was jazz music only for African Americans? No. What's that? No. Matter of fact, the first jazz group to make any recordings was the original Dixieland Jazz Band. And they did that in actually 1917. They were a little ahead of their time. And in 1917, the original Dixieland Jazz Band became the first group to make recordings. They were all white. They were all white. So in 1917, the original Dixieland Jazz Band became the first all-white jazz group to make recordings. And did jazz music stay? Caitlin, did jazz music stay in New Orleans? Where'd it go to? What two big cities did it really branch off into? Chicago, and a black ghetto in New York called Harlem. Very good. You guys are awesome. So jazz music spread from New Orleans to Chicago and finally to an area of New York City known as Harlem. Anybody watch the movie Life with Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy about the two black guys that got wrongfully convicted of murder and spent their whole life in prison? It's a great show. It's comical. If you get a chance, watch it. It's called Life. But they always referred to the great jazz nightclub in Harlem that everybody went to, known as the Cotton Club. So in Harlem, New York, the most well-known nightclub, and maybe one of the best-known jazz nightclubs ever, was the Cotton Club in Harlem. If you watch that movie Life, they talk about they're so depressed because they're in prison, they think about, going to New York and starting their own cotton club called the Boom Boom Club. If you get a chance, you're bored, get up Netflix and watch Life. It's pretty comical, actually. Okay? Now, probably the most famous jazz musician to perform at the Cotton Club on a consistent basis was the great jazz musician Duke Ellington. That doesn't mean others didn't perform there, but he performed there most consistently. He was there a lot. So again, probably the most famous jazz musician to perform at the Cotton Club on a consistent basis was the great jazz musician Duke Ellington. Okay, that'll take us to something we talked about in technology, which was movies. We'll tell you about the movie scene in the 1920s. Movies in the 1920s, and we talked a little bit about this. But during the 1920s, the motion picture business became very popular. People started going to the movies. And after World War I, a suburb of Los Angeles, California emerged as the movie capital of the world, better known as Hollywood. Very good. So shortly after World War I, a suburb of Los Angeles, California emerged as what was known as the movie capital of the world, which we know as Hollywood. Now, I told you about early movies in the 1920s. They were called silent movies, right? Where the people talked, so to speak, and then the lines came across. Well, movies were silent until 1927. And the audience read the words on the screen to follow the plot of the movie. And after 1927, sound came about and made them, more popular. Okay? Now, let me ask you a question. What's your favorite movie, Matt, of all time?
I don't know. Jurassic Park.
Okay, do you know any actors in that?
I do, but
Okay, that's a good.
I
Okay.
can't think of it.
No, that's a good point. Caitlin, what's your favorite movie of all time? Okay, you know any actors in that? Okay, Russell Crowe, we'll go with that. Okay, Tristan, got a favorite movie?
Not really.
Really? Hunter,
Yeah, Glorious Bastards.
that's a good one. You know any actors in there?
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt. Olivia, got a favorite movie? Seriously? How about you, Garza? No? Paige? Who's got a favorite movie that they really like? Nobody? Get a life, man! Get a life! Open Range, Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile. I mean, I could go on and on. Okay, you know what I watch all the time? Outlaw Josie Wales. Hang 'em High. Why? Why do I watch those movies? And who else do I like? I like Clint Eastwood. Well, the thing about these movies in the 1920s is they did not identify the actors and actresses like they do now when they first came out. So, how did these movie stars evolve then if they didn't identify them in the movie? People became more attracted to the what than the what. I'll watch any movie Clint Eastwood's in. I don't care what. Driving Miss Daisy, horrible movie in my opinion, but he's in it. Okay, favorite movie of all time, Clint Eastwood, Gran Torino. I'll watch any movie Clint Eastwood is in or directs. Okay, so what did people do? They figured out by word of mouth, hey, wasn't that Maddie Dupree in that last movie? Man, she was awesome. I'm going to find another movie that lady's in. And that's how the movie star came about in American history, is that these people would identify themselves with actors, and movie studios soon figured out, hey, these American people have favorites as far as actors and actresses, and they knew that, oh man, if I get Paris Keynes to star in my movie, people will come and the ticket sales will go up. So these movie producers were paying attention. Gee whiz, a lot of people like Paris Keynes, and so if I can get her in my next movie, is that how it works today? Absolutely. You think of somebody, when they do a part, if Brad Pitt's real popular, you think they're going to go try to get Brad Pitt or Tom Hanks? That's what people do, because they know if those people are in their movie, people will come and watch. So with that, the age of the movie star had begun. Here are some famous actors and actresses of the 1920s. You probably are going to have to Google them, right? Because they'll make no sense to you. But the two, well, I'll just go through it. Some female actresses very popular in the 1920s. Clara Bow, Lillian Gish, Gloria Swanson, Greta Garbo. Woo-hoo! Greta Garbo. So Clara Bow, Lillian Gish, Gloria Swanson, and Greta Garbo. Matter of fact, Joseph Kennedy Sr., who was quite the runaround, I guess for lack of a better term, had an alleged affair with Lillian Gish during his younger days. She was the, oh, this is really, she's the Angelina Jolie of the 1990s and 2000s. You know what I mean? She was the hot item. Okay? They were hot items. Men that were great actors of the 1920s, John Barrymore. You ever heard of Drew Barrymore? Her grandfather, John Barrymore. Douglas Fairbanks. He was kind of the big stud of the day, his day. And they were drama-type actors. Who was your comedy man? Charlie Chaplin. Yep, Charlie Chaplin. So these are famous actors and actresses of the 1920s. Now again, people took a liking to the romantic couple of actor and actresses. And John Barrymore and Lillian Gish were kind of the hot couple in the movie scene in the 1920s. They always guaranteed a great box office profit if they were starring in a movie. So these movie producers tried to get these two together quite a bit because people liked them. And the movie star, as we know it today, was born. Now, Charlie Chaplin was a single-act comedian, right? The first famous duo comedians in the 1920s were Laurel and Hardy. You ever heard of Laurel and Hardy? Anybody know anything about the appearance of Laurel and Hardy? Two guys, comedy guys. Jack Sprat, could eat no fat. Who was his butt partner? I don't know. What's the difference, you know? It's so-and-so could eat no lean. Come on, help me out with it. Yeah, so Laurel and Hardy were, Laurel was tall and skinny, Hardy was short, fat. And they made a great comedy duo, and people loved to watch them. They were funny. Now, you probably wouldn't think they're funny because comedy was a little different in the 1920s. But if you get bored someday, Google up Laurel and Hardy and see what you find out. Okay? All right. Let's see what we got left here. We're going to talk about heroes in the 1920s, and then we'll get into the depressive depression tomorrow. Heroes in the 1920s. All kinds of different heroes, right? There were many, many heroes that were established during the decade of the 1920s. What helped make people heroes? Didn't have television in those days, but what did we have? Radio. So radio helped create instant heroes in the 1920s as it broadcast news into millions of homes across the nation, so people were much more aware quicker of what people were doing than the newspaper. So I'll give you a couple of heroes here. Not a great name, but a hero. Gertrude Ederle. Anybody know what Gertrude Ederle did? Male or female? Gertrude.
Male.
Female.
Oh God, that's a horrible name.
Female. She was the first woman in history to swim the what? English Channel. Very good. She became the first woman in history to swim the English Channel. She was so popular for doing so, she was given a ticker tape parade in downtown New York City in 1926. What's a ticker tape parade, Macklin?
Well, it's some kind of parade.
Yeah, but what's the significance of a ticker tape parade? You go down the main street of New York City, and what do people do? Yeah, they show up. Ticker tape. What? Kind of. If you ever watched the Super Bowl, at the end of the Super Bowl, what happens when all the players are on stands? What do you see it? All this paper coming down. That's kind of an offshoot of ticker tape. What a ticker tape parade is the ticker tape off the New York Stock Exchange. Tell you about the stocks. All that ticker tape that came out was collected, and then people threw that out windows down the main street of New York City to give a hero's welcome, and that's where the ticker tape parade came from. Now if you watch a confetti, yeah, we call it confetti now. If you watch a Super Bowl victory, you have all this confetti that comes down on the field. That all comes from the original ticker tape parade. And Gertrude Ederle was given one of those, which is a big deal. It takes hours and hours and hours to clean up that ticker tape off the streets in New York after you get one. Another hero in the 1920s was Charles Lindbergh. You've all heard of Charles Lindbergh. And in 1927, he flew from New York to Paris nonstop in 33 hours. making the first solo flight across the Atlantic Ocean? Charles Lindbergh. 1927, Lindbergh flew from New York to Paris non-stop in 33 hours, making the first solo flight across the Atlantic Ocean. Anybody know the name of the plane he flew? Spirit of St. Louis. That original plane restored is in the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., and you'll get a chance to see that next year. It's pretty cool. Spirit of St. Louis. Now that was so popular that President Wilson sent a warship to Paris to bring Lindbergh and his plane back home. And what did he get in New York City? A ticker tape parade. Now, when this parade was over, they estimated that street cleaners cleaned up about 1,800 tons of paper that was dropped out of the windows down Main Street of New York City. When the parade was over for Lindbergh, it was estimated that street cleaners swept up approximately 1,800 tons of paper off the streets. Okay, another famous hero in the world of sports in the 1920s was Barney Oldfield. Anybody want to guess what sport he was big in?
Baseball.
Nope. Nope.
Hockey.
Nope. Hockey. Nope.
Golf.
You'll know, because you're good at it.
Racing.
Auto racing! Yeah, auto racing. How about Helen Wills? What was she famous at in sports? She might have won Wimbledon if it was available. Tennis, very famous tennis player. This guy may have defeated Muhammad Ali if they were in the same age group. Jack Dempsey, what was he? Boxer, professional boxer. So you got Barney Oldfield, an auto racer, Helen Wills, a tennis player, Jack Dempsey, a professional boxer. This guy, for the longest time, held the major league record for home runs in a season and a career. Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth. And the most famous college football player, because pro football wasn't a huge deal in the 1920s, but college still was. A college football player that was unbelievable was the Galloping Ghost. Because of his speed, his name, Red Grange. Red Grange, the Galloping Ghost, one of the first, probably the first great football player in college is Red Grange. Okay, here's kind of how it's going to go here, kiddos. We're going to have a lecture tomorrow on the Great Depression. We're going to have a review on Monday and a test on Tuesday. And then when we get back from the test, it won't be very long, we'll review Fort Phil Hardy. Now, I want to ask you something. I am a dictator to a point, but I do think you guys should have some say in your education. I planned this trip to Fort Phil Kearny. Is everybody still into it? Do you want to go? Because maybe some people are thinking, oh, no, it's a bad time of year. We're good to go? Okay, and again, it's optional. If you don't go, it's fine. I'll give you an assignment. I need to know 100% for sure that you're not going to go by Monday at the end of the period so I can get your assignment ready for you. Otherwise, we're ready to roll. So lecture tomorrow. Make sure you get it off the website if you're gone. Review on Monday, test Tuesday in the comments. Okay? Perfect.